Stop carrying the weight of everything. Not because what you're dealing with is insignificant, but because it was never yours to hold in the first place. Right now, there's something in your life that keeps looping in your mind. You revisit it, analyze it, try to control it, hoping that if you think hard enough, you'll finally solve it. But the more attention you give it, the heavier it becomes. What if the problem isn't just the situation itself, but the way you're engaging with it? What if the constant worrying is what keeps it active? You've been conditioned to believe that solutions come from pressure, from overthinking, from trying to control every detail. But there's a deeper truth most people miss. The moment you release that mental grip, life begins to shift in ways you couldn't force before. This isn't about pretending things are fine or ignoring reality. It's about understanding how your inner state shapes what you experience. Worry isn't something that randomly happens to you. It's something you participate in. And once you see that clearly, it starts to lose its hold over you. Every time you worry, you're using your imagination in a way that works against you. You create scenarios in your mind, feel them as if they're already happening, and then wonder why you feel stuck or drained. Your mind was never meant to rehearse problems over and over. It was meant to move you toward outcomes. But when worry becomes automatic, your imagination starts projecting fear, things going wrong, delays, loss. You begin to emotionally live inside situations that haven't even occurred. And because your body responds as if they're real, it leaves you exhausted. Imagination itself isn't the problem. It doesn't judge or filter. It simply follows direction. When it's guided by fear, it amplifies fear. When it's guided by trust, it creates calm and alignment. So the way out isn't to suppress your thoughts. It's to gently redirect them. Instead of asking yourself, what if this falls apart? You begin to lean into the possibility that things are working out for you. Not forcefully, not desperately, but with a quiet acceptance. As that shift happens, something inside you changes. The tension softens. And when your inner state changes, your outer experience begins to reflect that. Worry starts to fade, not because everything instantly disappears, but because you stop feeding it with your energy. Most people believe that progress only comes through effort and struggle. They think if they push hard enough or think long enough, life will eventually respond. But it doesn't work that way. What truly shapes your reality is what you accept as true within yourself. Life doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to who you're being. If you're constantly trying to force an outcome, you're operating from a place that says something is missing, and that creates resistance. But when you internally settle into the feeling that things are already unfolding in your favor, everything begins to move differently. This shift is subtle. It's not loud or dramatic. It's a quiet decision inside you, a kind of inner knowing that doesn't need constant validation. When you begin to live from that place, the pressure starts to lift. You stop chasing signs and instead move through life with a sense of calm certainty. And life in turn starts to mirror that back to you. Trying too hard often delays things because it reinforces the idea that something isn't here yet. But when you embody the feeling that it's already handled, you align yourself with completion instead of lack. This is what it means to stop waiting on circumstances and instead shift your internal state. Every problem tends to stay active because it hasn't been resolved emotionally within you. Thinking about solutions isn't enough. Your mind can analyze endlessly, but it's your emotional state that signals completion. If you still feel tension, urgency, or fear, then internally, the situation is still open. But when you allow yourself to feel relief, calm, and certainty, even before anything visibly changes, you begin to close that loop inside. You don't have to fake happiness. You just need to connect with the feeling you would have if things were already resolved. Ask yourself honestly, if this was completely taken care of, how would I feel? Then allow yourself to rest in that feeling, even if just for a moment. Let your body soften. Let your breath deepen. Let your mind quiet down. That sense of relief is powerful. It signals that something has shifted internally. And once that shift happens, the external world begins to reorganize in response. Most people wait for things to change before they allow themselves to feel better. But it works the other way around. The feeling comes first. The evidence follows. When you stop postponing peace, you stop delaying resolution. The feeling of it's done is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't constantly check for proof. It simply trusts. And trust isn't passive, it's creative. But the moment you start asking, how is this going to happen? You pull yourself out of that trust and back into doubt. The mind always wants details. It wants a clear path, a timeline, a step-by-step plan before it feels safe. But life doesn't require you to understand every step. There are so many processes happening around and within you that you don't consciously control. Your heart beats without instruction. A seed grows into a tree without your interference. In the same way, solutions can unfold without you needing to map them out. When you keep asking how, you stay in a state of waiting. You delay peace by placing it somewhere in the future. But peace is available now if you allow it. Letting go of the need to understand everything doesn't mean you're careless. It means you're aligned with something greater than your limited perspective. When you focus on the outcome, the feeling of resolution, and stop trying to control the path, things begin to fall into place in unexpected ways. Opportunities arise, people show up, situations shift, and often, when you look back, you realize everything came together more smoothly than you could have planned. Peace isn't something you earn after everything is fixed. It's something you choose regardless of what's happening. And that choice carries power. When you remain peaceful, you stop resisting what is. And it's that resistance that keeps problems alive. The inner struggle, the constant argument with reality, that's what drains you. When you choose peace, you end that inner conflict. It doesn't mean you ignore challenges. It means you no longer let them control your internal state. From that place, something opens up. You stop reacting emotionally to every situation, and instead, you create space for solutions to emerge. Life responds quickly to that stillness. What felt blocked begins to move. What felt tense starts to soften. Peace carries an unspoken message. This is already taken care of. And that message influences everything. When peace becomes natural for you, you don't need to constantly repeat affirmations or visualize intensely. Your presence itself becomes aligned. Many people move through life believing that peace is something they have to earn. They tell themselves, once this problem is solved, then I'll relax. Once things finally go my way, then I'll feel calm. So they spend their days trying to fix, control, and rearrange everything around them, thinking that peace will arrive as a result of those efforts. But it rarely works that way. Even when one problem is solved, another one appears. Even when things improve, the mind finds something else to hold on to. And so peace keeps getting postponed, pushed further into the future, always just out of reach. But what if that entire approach is reversed? What if peace isn't the reward at the end of the journey, but the starting point that changes the journey itself? The moment you begin to see this, something shifts. You realize that peace is not dependent on circumstances. It is not something handed to you when life finally behaves the way you want it to. It is something you can choose, deliberately, even in the middle of uncertainty. And that choice is not small. It is not passive. It is one of the most powerful decisions you can make, because the moment you choose peace, your relationship with everything begins to change. Instead of reacting to every situation with tension or urgency, you start responding from a place of steadiness. The same challenges may still exist, but they no longer feel as overwhelming. The same uncertainty may still be there, but it no longer controls your emotional state. Something inside you becomes anchored, and from that anchored place, life begins to reorganize. Not always in dramatic or immediate ways, but subtly, steadily. The things that once felt stuck begin to loosen. The situations that felt heavy begin to soften. You start noticing small shifts, conversations that go differently, opportunities that appear, decisions that feel clearer. It's not that the external world suddenly becomes perfect. It's that your inner world is no longer resisting it, and that lack of resistance allows movement where there was once blockage. This is why returning to peace matters so much. Not just once, not just when it feels easy, but again and again. Every time your mind drifts back into worry, every time you feel yourself tightening around a problem, you gently come back. Not by force, not by fighting your thoughts, but by remembering that you have another option. You can pause. You can breathe. You can choose to step out of the cycle, even if only for a moment. And those moments begin to add up. Peace becomes less of a rare experience and more of a familiar place you can return to. It becomes your foundation, something steady beneath you regardless of what's happening around you. And when peace becomes your foundation, everything else begins to rest on it differently. You start to see that peace was never about having a perfect life with no problems. That idea was never realistic. There will always be challenges, changes, unknowns. But peace was never meant to come after all of that disappears. It was meant to exist alongside it, to guide you through it. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the way you move through them without losing yourself. And when you really understand that, you stop waiting. You stop telling yourself that you'll feel better later once everything is fixed. You stop tying your emotional state to outcomes you can't fully control. Instead, you bring your attention back to what you can choose right now. Right now, you can soften your breath. Right now, you can release the tension in your body. Right now, you can stop replaying the same thoughts that keep pulling you into stress. Right now, you can decide that you don't need to carry everything all at once. And in that decision, something begins to lift. It may not be dramatic at first. It might feel subtle, almost unnoticeable. But there is a lightness that wasn't there before, a sense that you are no longer gripping so tightly. And that alone changes everything. Because when you stop gripping, you stop exhausting yourself. You no longer feel like you have to chase every solution or figure everything out immediately. You no longer feel like you have to fight your way through every situation. Instead, you begin to move with life rather than against it. There is a quiet confidence that starts to emerge. Not the kind that comes from having all the answers, but the kind that comes from knowing you don't need to have them all right now. The kind that trusts that things can unfold, that clarity can come, that solutions can appear without you forcing them into existence. And this doesn't mean you stop taking action. It doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means your actions come from a different place. Instead of acting from fear, you act from clarity. Instead of acting from urgency, you act from steadiness. Instead of acting because you feel pressured, you act because it feels aligned. That difference is everything. Because actions taken from peace tend to be more effective, more thoughtful, more in tune with what's actually needed. They don't carry the same strain or resistance. They flow more naturally. And as you begin to live this way, you start to trust something deeper. You begin to trust that what you settle within yourself doesn't stay internal. It reflects outward. The calm you create inside begins to influence your environment. The clarity you cultivate begins to shape your decisions. The trust you hold begins to open paths you couldn't see before. You don't have to chase outcomes in the same way because you start to see that life responds to who you are being, not just what you are doing. So instead of constantly reaching outward, you return inward. You come back to that place of quiet knowing. You remind yourself that not everything needs to be solved right now. You remind yourself that carrying the weight of every possible outcome doesn't protect you, it drains you. And slowly you begin to let go, not in a dramatic all-at-once way, but piece by piece. You release the need to control every detail. You release the habit of overthinking every possibility. You release the belief that worry is somehow helping you. And as you release, space opens up. Space for new ideas, space for better decisions, space for unexpected solutions. Space for something greater than your constant effort to move through your life. So tonight, instead of holding on, you choose to put it down. You allow yourself to step out of the mental noise, even if just for a while. You stop replaying the same thoughts. You stop trying to predict every outcome. You stop carrying what hasn't even happened yet. And you let yourself feel something different, a quiet sense of relief. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've decided you don't need to carry it all right now. You let your shoulders drop. You let your breath slow down. You let your mind settle even if it resists at first. And in that stillness, you begin to sense something that was always there beneath the noise. A calm that doesn't depend on circumstances. A steadiness that doesn't need constant reassurance. A presence that simply exists, waiting for you to notice it. This is what happens when you stop interfering with constant worry. You create space, and in that space, something begins to move. Not always in ways you can see immediately, but in ways that matter. Things begin to align. Conversations unfold differently. Ideas come to you at the right time. Opportunities appear where there once seemed to be none. And often it happens in ways you never could have planned. That's the part the mind struggles with. Because the mind wants control. It wants predictability. It wants to know exactly how everything will work out. But life doesn't always operate within those limits. There is a larger intelligence at play. One that doesn't require your constant interference to function. And when you step back, when you allow that intelligence to move without resistance, you start to see just how much can unfold on its own. So trust that. Not blindly, not forcefully, but gently. Trust that you don't have to carry everything by yourself. Trust that letting go is not the same as giving up. Trust that choosing peace is not a sign that you are avoiding life or stepping away from responsibility. It is not weakness and it is not passivity. It is strength in its most steady and grounded form. It is the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself through struggle or constant effort. It doesn't rush, it doesn't panic, and it doesn't collapse under pressure. Instead, it remains stable, clear, and deeply rooted, even when everything around it feels uncertain. Most people misunderstand this. They believe that being strong means pushing harder, thinking more, controlling everything, and never letting go. They associate calmness with inaction, as if choosing peace means you are giving up or falling behind. But the truth is, the constant tension, the overthinking, the endless need to fix everything, that is what weakens you over time. It drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and keeps you stuck in cycles that don't move you forward. Peace, on the other hand, restores you. It brings you back to yourself. It allows you to think clearly, to see things as they are instead of through the lens of fear or urgency. It gives you the space to respond rather than react. And from that space, your actions become more effective, more intentional, and more aligned with what actually matters. So when you choose peace, you are not delaying your progress. You are supporting it in a deeper and more sustainable way. It might not always feel like that in the beginning. There may be moments where your mind tells you that you should be doing more, worrying more, figuring everything out right now. It may feel uncomfortable to step out of that Pravichnyi pattern of stress and control. But that discomfort is simply the result of doing something different. It is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. With time, you begin to notice the difference. When you act from a place of tension, everything feels forced. Even simple decisions feel heavy. You second guess yourself, you rush, you react impulsively. But when you act from peace, there is a sense of ease even in effort. You move with clarity. You make decisions without that constant inner noise. You trust your timing instead of trying to compete with it. And slowly life begins to meet you at that level. It responds to the state you are consistently holding. When you are grounded, life reflects more stability. When you are calm, situations begin to soften. When you are clear, opportunities become easier to recognize. It's not that everything suddenly becomes perfect, but the way things unfold starts to feel more supportive, more connected, less chaotic. You start to experience moments where things fall into place without you forcing them. Conversations happen at the right time. Answers come when you are not desperately searching for them. Paths open that you didn't even know were available before. And when that happens, you begin to understand something important. Not everything in life needs to be pushed into existence. Some things unfold naturally when you stop interfering with constant pressure and doubt. This is why returning to peace matters so much. Not just once, but repeatedly. Again and again. Because the mind will wander. It will go back to worry, to fear, to trying to control outcomes. That's its habit. But every time you notice it, you have the opportunity to come back. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You don't need to judge yourself for slipping into old patterns. You simply recognize it and gently bring yourself back to that place of calm. You return to your breath. You return to the present moment. You return to the understanding that you don't need to solve everything right now. And over time, this becomes easier. Peace stops being something you visit occasionally and starts becoming the place you live from. It becomes your foundation. No matter what is happening externally, you know there is a part of you that can remain steady. A part of you that is not shaken by every change, every challenge, every unknown. And that inner steadiness changes the way you experience everything. Your thoughts become less chaotic. Your actions become more intentional. Your responses become more measured. You stop reacting to every situation as if it's urgent or threatening. Instead, you give yourself the space to understand, to choose, to move with awareness. And in doing so, you stop carrying everything alone. Because a lot of what feels heavy in life isn't just the situation itself, it's the way you hold it. The constant mental involvement, the emotional resistance, the belief that you have to manage every outcome by yourself. That is what creates the burden. When you shift into peace, you loosen that grip. You allow yourself to trust that not everything depends on your constant effort. You allow space for things to come together in ways you may not fully understand yet. And that doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop overcarrying. There is a difference. Caring comes from presence, from being engaged with what matters. Overcarrying comes from fear, from trying to control what you cannot. Peace helps you return to that balance. And as you continue to live from that space, your perspective begins to change. You start to see that life is not something that has to be forced into place. It is not something that only works when you push hard enough or worry long enough. There is a natural rhythm to it, a kind of intelligence that is always moving, always adjusting, always finding ways forward. When you are constantly tense, you lose connection with that rhythm. You try to override it, to control it, to make things happen according to your timeline. But when you are at peace, you begin to move with it instead of against it. And that changes everything, because things begin to unfold, not in a chaotic or random way, but in a way that often feels precise, almost as if things are aligning behind the scenes. The right moment appears, the right idea comes to you, the right opportunity shows up, and it often happens without the strain you thought would be necessary. There is a quiet kind of unfolding that takes place when you stop forcing life. It is subtle but powerful. And when you experience it enough times, you begin to trust it. You begin to see that not everything needs your constant interference. That some of the best outcomes come not from pushing harder, but from allowing space, from staying open, from remaining grounded in peace even when you don't have all the answers. So you keep returning to it, not because everything is perfect, but because you understand its value. You let peace guide the way you think. You let it shape the way you act. You let it influence how you respond to challenges, to uncertainty, to change, and slowly it becomes natural. You no longer have to remind yourself constantly. It becomes your default state, the place you come back to without effort. And from that place, life begins to feel different, less heavy, less rushed, less forced, more aligned, more supportive, more connected. You begin to see clearly that peace was never something waiting for you at the end of your problems. It was always available right here in the middle of them. And the more you choose it, the more life begins to reflect it back to you in ways you never expected.